So there is this popular piece of advice that says, don't compare yourself to others, compare yourself to yourself. And I think there are cases where that's valid, but there's a lot of cases that people try to apply it like as a blanket thing, where it really is bad advice. And I've often recognized that, but I couldn't explain why. And so I think I have a better sense of when it is good advice and when you actually do want to compare yourself to other people and how. And so I think it's good advice when you are starting out and you're comparing yourself, how far have you come to where you were? And so this book, which I mentioned, I haven't read, but I learned about it from a later book these people wrote, The Gap and the Gain. Basically, you look at how far you've come instead of how far you have to go. And that's more about comparing yourself to your past self as opposed to your ideal future self. But that is really the only context where I think it makes sense. I guess also a little bit, if people have resources you don't, and seeing what they're doing at the same level and recognizing, okay, they have these resources, that is helpful. Like with these videos, one thing that really helped me be more productive in this methodology was realizing most of the successful YouTubers that I'm familiar with, it turns out they come from rich families and they started out buying expensive equipment and hiring editors before their channels were profitable. And I don't have that option. And editing was the big bottleneck for me. And I had to find a way, it was one of the biggest bottlenecks. I had to find a way around that. And so if you're using that to, but then you're still comparing yourself to others, right? Because I'm saying, oh, these people have these advantages. I don't. I need to find a different way. But it does make sense in terms of don't compare yourself in terms of saying, oh, I'm a failure because I can't do what someone with fancy equipment and an editor, and often a writer too, starting out the gate has. But those are really the only cases where I would say it applies. Whereas there's a lot of cases where you actually do want to compare yourself to other people. And I think two of the biggest ones are look at what other people are doing that works, that you might be able to copy, and look at what other people are not doing that you think you need to do that you might be able to drop. And so there is this story that you probably heard. So there's two hikers, and they're going through the woods, and they see a bear, and it's like a brown bear, right? Not a friendly black bear, like brown grizzly bear. And one of the hikers bends down to start tying their shoes, and the other hiker says, there's no way you can outrun that bear. And the first hiker says, I don't need to outrun the bear, I just need to outrun you. And so it's sort of that principle where it's like, okay, look at what other people are doing, and can I do it better? Can I copy things they're doing better than I am? And also, are they doing things that I'm not doing that indicate that it's maybe not worth doing? And so a big one for me was obviously dropping the scripting. That was probably the biggest one, but also worrying about video and audio quality. And thank you, by the way, to viewer Many Monarchs who helped me get the audio louder. And I would need better equipment to get it better, but it's at least on YouTube levels, and I appreciate that help. And I've gotten the lighting better than when I started, but the video quality still isn't great, because I've realized, like, the videos I watch, often they have bad lighting, bad video quality, and sometimes even really bad audio, but I still watch them because they have interesting things to say, and that tells me that for the kind of niche that I like to watch, what I want to be doing is trying to find things that are interesting to say that other people aren't saying, or aren't saying as well, or aren't saying in the same way, and that's what I'm trying to focus on. And if I can do something easily to improve that, so again, thank you, Many Monarchs, for telling me about the volume thing, and I've got a pipeline that increases my volume. That's an easy fix. But if it's pain, then I don't. Like, my lighting has actually gotten worse because I would initially fiddle with the blinds to try to get the lighting exactly right so that my face was illuminated on both sides. And then I had a video that I didn't want to reshoot because the shoot was perfect, but there were clouds coming and going, and so my lighting was wonky, and I'm like, okay, I'm giving up on the lighting. Like, I've seen more successful YouTubers with worse lighting. This is not a priority. And likewise, again, my video quality isn't great, don't have expensive equipment, but I've seen people, like, I mentioned being inspired by Nick Pardini, Analyzing Finance with Nick, and he, I would say, still has both worse video setup and worse audio setup, and he's doing way better. And if I get to that point, like, I can buy better equipment as well, but for the time being, I'm focusing on trying to say interesting things as opposed to maximizing production quality. But I'm also, so I learned both positive thing here in terms of, oh, what I should be focusing on is trying to say things that other people aren't, or saying them in ways other people aren't. And the negative of don't worry too much about the video, the lighting, and that might have also contributed to figuring out the scripting as well, because I actually had to compromise on the video quality even before I dropped the scripting. So wanted to talk about that quickly because I think it really, you do want to compare yourself to other people. I think the advice is good as don't beat yourself up about other people with more advantages doing better than you. and compare yourself to where you were as opposed to where you're going or where other people are. But there really are cases where you need to compare yourself to other people, and I've often gotten this advice in those cases, and it's bad advice, and people just, it's a truism, and they don't think about, does it actually apply, which I mentioned I love the work of Idries Shah, and he talks about that a lot. People love citing, like, advice, truism, that doesn't apply to the right context, and I don't think he mentions, but this also makes people trust the advice less, because they're like, well, people give it to me when it doesn't apply, but sometimes it does apply, so you need to know when it applies and when it doesn't. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'm Magpie, this is Leela, and I'll see y'all on the next one.